Hello, Trekkies! With this episode, we've finally caught up with last year's votes for topics, and you'll find new votes up waiting for your decision. Today, we're going to have a look at nearly 60 years worth of transporter effects on this edition of...
It's the best five, worst five, no one has seen. Yeah, it's the best five, worst five Treks ever seen.
Between different eras and alien races, we've actually gotten a look at dozens of different transporter effects across the Trek franchise. Though, with so many to choose from, most are pretty serviceable, and this is probably the most subjective ranking we've done yet. So sit back and enjoy the light show. As usual, starting at 5th worst. Too long a season. While Star Trek VI is one of the franchise's best movies, and the transporter sequence with Chancellor Gorkon is legendary, it's also the longest normal transport cycle across the franchise. Clearly for dramatic effect, but for a movie that's drawing on 5 previous, and already 4 seasons of TNG to pull from, this effect is underwhelming. Even as this group of Klingons is almost fully materialized, the sparkly overtones look really fake. It feels like they tried to make the transporter beam itself a character, including in the scene where Starfleet troopers assassinate Gorkon. We get more up close and personal with the transporter in this movie. It's just too bad the effect itself is so underwhelming in its close-ups. Number 4. Future-proof. I understand that series finales are money-hungry endeavors, so this worst ranking isn't for the effect itself being bad. It's for Admiral Janeway in Voyager's alternate future during Endgame, using the same Starfleet transporter effect we've seen through the show's run, decades after it should have gone out of style. Considering the episode that precedes this, Renaissance Man introduced the hierarchy effect, this entry feels quite literally cheap. But that brings us to number 3, Renaissance Wasted. Considering the budget used here for a single transport could have made more impact in the finale is bad enough. The fact that the hierarchy's transport cycle is about as vanilla as can be feels like a wasted effect the whole way around. The Doctor was clever enough to fool his comrades into stealing Voyager's warp core, but couldn't see being double-crossed coming when he puts the Delta Flyer's shields down with the understanding he was getting Janeway back, only to be captured himself by their boring transporter. Not one of his finest moments. Number 2. Spatial trajector. We've seen this technology twice. First in Voyager's Prime Factors, and a version built by the Borg after assimilating the species in Picard's The Impossible Box. If the goal of transporting is to effortlessly move people across thousands of light years, this actually succeeds handily. But then again, both effects are dull, and that's what we're here talking about. Harry Kim and his first in a long line of wrong women step onto a transporter-like pad, then they're tens of thousands of light years away. Later, Picard and Soji walk into a portal-like thing that yeets them a couple of dozen light years away. Impressive tech, but it only feels special on paper. And the worst transporter effect at number 1, and then you are gone. Much like the previous entry, the portable transporter that becomes part of the standard kit in every Starfleet officer's combadge is some really interesting and impressive tech. However, it doesn't do much visually to signify moving from point A to B. And on a practical level, this is probably a great advancement 800 years in the future. It effortlessly shuffles people around with nothing more than a thought. But it happens in so few frames, it feels like I Dream of Jeannie 60s-style quick-action cuts. Makes you wonder how people get their steps in when they're personal transporting into the next room. As we tune the Heisenberg compensators on the best transporter effects, if you're enjoying the content, please consider a like and subscribe. At 5th best, Broken Things. Yes, we're starting the best off with a transporter system that's not working correctly in Picard Season 2. After slingshot time traveling back to our current year of 2024, The crew of La Sirena uses their busted Confederation transporter to get around, and it's actually really interesting. It's similar to other transports we've seen in the show, but the Confederation version has more colors, and the effect of it glitching out is actually interesting because it's different from the norm. I mean, it's all fun and games till someone ends up reloading a Grand Theft Auto save. Number 4. Deep Purple. We've got yet another transport method from Picard Season 2, though first introduced in TOS's Assignment Earth. The Supervisor transporter is another one that's just a little different than all the other transports we've seen across species, particularly that the device that does the technobabble is a bank vault capable of transport across light years. The purple smoke that reaches out and grabs you in the shape of its doorway is kinda beautiful to behold. I really hope we get more about the Supervisors and their relationship to the Travelers in future Trek. Number 3. Adding some flair. Much like the previous episode of Best 5 Worst 5, Voyager's entry again feels like it picked up where TNG left off in the transporter department and added its own special touch. It uses a similar but not the same sound effect, and adds these digital sort of energy arrows on the classic effect to kick it up a notch. For as off the rails as the story got at times in Voyager, it really did well polishing classic formulas of Trek past. Number 2. Oldie but a goodie. TNG feels like the bar to clear in many categories, as there's just something about its effects and sets from the late 80s that actually have held up remarkably well over the years, including the D's transport cycle. Rather than a freeze-frame rotoscope like in TOS, the effects department was able to let people move around and speak a bit during the transport in the TNG era. Sometimes all you need is a little aluminum powder. And the best transport cycle in Trek, at number 1, Serpent's Tooth. The Cardassian transporter effect used in both TNG and DS9 was kind of a beautiful thing that both feels like cycles we've seen before, and its own distinct thing. It's the first time the beam seems to go around the individual rather than just being a mostly vertical process. The sort of after-transport stars and artifacts that remain feel like a natural part of the transport cycle. The goldish green is a good choice on a production level for a race of lizard-like people. I wonder if the Bajorans ever had transporter capability of their own, or if they ended up with the Cardassians' tech. What's your favorite transporter effect?